Three, two, one. Hey, welcome back. It's been about a 10-month wait. I know you've all been waiting for this moment. If you have been, I feel sorry for you. But uh, anyways, as I normally do with my awkward introductions, this is the Bebo Knows podcast relaunch. I can't say it's going to happen every week or even every month, but the circumstances kind of warranted it. With everything going on in the gambling world that's happened in the past couple months. So here we go. It's Brian Bullock, and today's guest is Professor Shine. How you doing today, Professor? I'm a little rusty, as you can see.
Hey, rust on podcast is no problem. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I can't complain. So yeah, as I mentioned, there's been a lot going on in the gambling world, particularly with the legalization aspect of betting, which we will get into. But one aspect that hasn't been discussed on a podcast since I haven't recorded in 10 months is opening thoughts here on Grooven Mahoven. So he passed away back in January, and I know that a lot of people reached out to me once I posted something on Twitter, and I think you might have been one of them, saying, "Is this for real or not?" And given the fact that he hasn't tweeted in like 6 months, and he was tweeting like thousands of times a day almost, I think it's safe to say that he's no longer with us. So when you heard the news, what was your initial reaction?
Well, like most people that knew him peripherally just from Twitter, I was shocked. I knew roughly how old he was, and anybody that passes that young, it's a tragedy. So I was in shock, and of course I thought, knowing Groven a little bit, that maybe it was false. Maybe he was going to take some time off or something and then come back. But I soon got it confirmed from people that knew him better than I, people that actually knew him in person. And once that happened, it kind of set in that, wow, who am I going to get to help with some things that when you struggle with math-wise or handicapping-wise or whatever. I mean, people who knew him less than I thought that all he did was troll touts, and that's nowhere near all he did.
So you had a lot of conversations with him through private messaging, I'm guessing.
Yes, yeah, and he lived in this area. Like I live in the Philadelphia metro area, South Jersey, and I think he was a Villanova grad, and so we had some things that were non-gambling that we would DM back and forth about.
Okay.
And but of course, the reason I know him is I somewhere maybe 4 or 5 years ago I had thrown some things his way that I struggled with, and when you did that, as long as you weren't selling picks or being a radio clown or fraud or whatever, he was always really quick to say, point out mistakes or point out ways to improve, and that's something that's definitely going to be missed for people that are pro or semi-pro or even recreational.
Sure. Yeah, I remember I was looking through my DMs today because I wanted to be able to discuss stuff that he discussed with me, and one thing that he mentioned to me, I remember DMing him the first time I ever DM'd him and saying, I really appreciate that with the particular person he was discussing with something about at the time. He was like, he was very cordial. He wasn't like, if since the person wasn't selling something, I feel like the conversation was a little more cordial. It was not. It was it was nicer in tone and all that. But when he said, and I quoted here, "I learned a lot of what I know by being told I'm wrong on gambling boards years ago," and just knowing that, like, I'm sure there's a lot of people that went to his DMs like you did, and I learned a lot by just picking his brain. He could be telling you what was right and what was wrong about your approach. I'm guessing you said something about numbers, so he probably helped you out some way with figuring out what you needed to do to make things better.
Well, yeah. If you're a recreational bettor, or even as you're going up the ladder from recreational to trying to be what I call like a rounder, where you're kind of a pro but not really, kind of disrespects pros. If you call yourself a pro and your bankroll isn't six figures plus, uh, but still that's still important. If you're betting 400 a game or 800 a game or 100 a game, you still want to have an idea of, hey, you know what, am I heading in the right direction here? And usually it's about mistakes. Like, hey, does this look right? Did I make a mistake? And it's something that I've noticed. This is like an ego-driven thing. A lot of people don't like to admit that they're wrong about anything, especially on
Yep.
gambling Twitter.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
and it's kind of to ask somebody, hey, what is this? What do you think about this? It can be humbling, because the person could say, oh, what are you, an idiot? How did you mess that up? And I think cordial is the right word. He was, as long as you realize you weren't a fraud, or you're trying to sell fraudulent information. Uh, he was very cordial to you, and I had uh, kind of built up a reputation from being on Twitter as not selling anything, and kind of coming from the background of, what, we were all recreational bettors at some point, and at some point somebody helped us, and
Sure.
even he admitted, he said, he got a lot of course he was really good at math too, which helps, but he said, I gotten uh, some tips in it. He had gotten some tips and advice from people that were pros, and said, listen, don't share this, you could share this, and then he was off and running. Of course, he used to post frequently on Roughing the Punter, a
Yeah.
pretty good forum board that I had stumbled into probably, I don't know, 10 years ago, something like that. And from the information I got, I think Roughing the Punter was run or owned by Perpetual Check, I believe. And I think he's a pro. In fact, I know he's a pro bettor because he's mentioned so often in different things, including books, and I think somebody else also partly run that. And Ruben used to post on that, and you'd find, I'd say, of all the sports gambling forums, that was probably the best one. I mean, none of them are really great, but that was probably the best one, as far as saying they've getting some detailed conversations that you could go more in depth than if you were just on Twitter.
Right. And I remember roughing the punter. I think they just recently like it isn't available anymore. So unfortunately, I don't know if anyone has archives of that. If anyone listens to this and has archives of that, please let us know. But I
Yeah,
remember.
you're right. You're
Yeah.
right. They did take that down. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what happened, but I think I'm not exactly sure even how some of them run. I'm sure you have to do some kind of. It helps if you can do some kind of promotions or sales or something. If you go on
Yeah.
any of these other ones, yeah, they have all these weird, well, not weird sponsors, but kind of sports book off the shore sponsors, and
Yeah.
if you don't have that, it's probably difficult to keep it going.
Yeah. You're paying out of pocket for everything and all that. So. Um, okay. So I guess before we go off of that topic to the next one. As far as the legacy he leaves behind, what would you say, like in terms of what we see on gambling Twitter? Do you see like his influence with people? Do you see it? Since he passed away, do you see things getting any better or worse?
Well, I like to believe that he was helping the recreational bettor that was trying to be a little bit better.
Yeah.
So I mean, one of the things that's difficult maybe to figure out is who's a pro, who's a rec, who's a. So I think if you tier the levels of sports bettors, you have recreational gamblers who are just completely clueless. I mean, I hate to pick on them, but it's just some people that will just fight you tooth and nail, and no matter who tries to help them, they're just hopeless. But
Right.
there's also a segment of recreational gamblers that say, you know what, I kind of want to do a little bit better, even if they're betting 100. Some tips where I can do a little bit better. And then, if you go up the hierarchy, you have people now that have increased their bankroll. They're doing it a little bit more seriously, until you get to the probably 1 or 2% that are betting, seriously, and that's their main mode of income. I think the legacy for Grooven is, I think there's kind of a hole of people that are trying to help people that are maybe in the beginning tiers, like the non-hopeless rec better, who understands a little bit of math and who understands that maybe he shouldn't just his portfolio game shouldn't be all every large favorite.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, but also people that maybe struggled with understanding, how you can flip coins over. Even really bad gamblers are going to be right around 50-50, and you'll still lose a ton being 50-50.
Yep.
So yeah, so he would explain simple concepts to people like that. I don't know if anybody. Well, there's two reasons. There's one, I don't know if anybody that is going to fill that void, and number two, the people that have the ability or the wherewithal to do that, they probably don't want to do that. There's an idea where, like, you don't want to overeducate, almost like poker. You don't want to overeducate too many people because it could end up hurting one's bottom line. Uh, Grooven's attitude, actually, I asked Grooven that kind of question before, is he never worried about giving out too much information? And he was under the assumption, he said, no. He said, some certain things won't hurt you. And I think people might have a tendency to bet more. But even if you have, this is so difficult, you could be equipped with all the correct tools and still lose. So I don't think he was worried of hurting his bottom line, which is a rarity. And I guess the overall legacy is that's going to be that's going to be missed. That there's going to be
Yeah.
a hole there.
No, there is, and yeah, there's been something missing about Twitter the past 6 months with him not on there to, you know, get like the delicate balance of helping the uneducated better and kind of railing on the frauds that will always be prevalent on here.
Yeah, I didn't even address that. That's like a whole nother thing. I mean,
Yeah,
I thought he was hilarious. I
yeah,
mean, so, not just the way he would take apart certain people, and then people would come back at him and be completely wrong, and then he would just obliviate. I mean, obliviate. He
yeah,
would just destroy those people. Hilarious. I mean, wittily. I that's definitely going to be missed. Also, I mean, his takedowns of just some obvious frauds with people like from OddsShark, or his last ones were on Clay Travis.
yeah. That was the
Uh,
last.
I mean, that was,
Yeah,
and that might be one of his best ones, because I mean, Clay Travis has a huge following,
yeah,
and
yeah,
uh, it was funny if you look back at some of the last tweets he did. He had not even Clay Travis himself, but some of the Clay Travis followers saying, "Well, how is this a scam?" And I think them coming back, or people coming back not understanding it, kind of set Grooven off, and he would. So then it was just a mission of just to say, here's why this is a scam. And a lot. I mean, I think we take for granted gambling Twitter, or anybody that's kind of involved in sports gambling kind of takes for granted the offshores and how they're kind of subtly paying people to push them to their offshore sites in any way possible. I mean, the
yep,
advertising for offshore is always been kind of I'm not sure how regulated, but I know it's regulated. And the way to get people to bet with your offshore site is to offer money to people that with large followings like Travis. So
Yeah,
his takedown of him was was really good. I mean, everybody liked it.
yeah. Actually, I'm on his Twitter page now, and that's the that's what he has as his pinned tweet. The whole promotions link that shows up in his initial tweet, and then like he's talking about some line that existed for like 1 minute, uh, so that people could go to Bet Online and then bet this line that didn't exist anymore.
Yeah, and only people that would bet at Bet Online or things like that. I mean, there's a little marketing trick that Bet Online and people like that'll do. They'll float out a line, that's complete garbage. It's and they would change it as soon as they get 500 or 250 total,
Yeah,
and then they would move the line back to what the opening line should be. But then
yeah,
they get to people who don't know. They say, oh well, I think Grooven's example with Travis was Florida sticks out in my mind
yeah,
for
yeah,
some reason.
yeah. That's what it was.
And
Yep.
I'm not even in front of my computer, so that shows how much that stood out. It was like, I think a Florida football game started out like 6 or 8 or something really just ridiculous, and Travis used that as his side, and then I think Clay Travis's excuse was, well, I don't know what side the line's going to go. Well, it's just misleading crap because that's not the right line. Everybody else has 9, open with 9, and this place has 6. So it's great marketing from Bet Online or whatever site that does that, because you'll have journalists or people that aren't betters or aren't serious betters who don't know the difference. They'll say, well, one offshore is the same thing as the other. When as we know, that's completely not true.
Sure. And I guess let's go into the let's go to the next topic here. This is a good segue because we have the legalized betting angle of our podcast now, and I'll kind of jump to one of the last points here because you're talking about journalists and the role of journalists as far as sports betting goes. Do you feel like that there's any way that uh, for them to escape their ignorance, they choose when they cover betting? Because I feel like they're all, or not all, but like 95 to 98% of them are gonna fall for those traps of getting those emails from Bet Online or Bovada in Vegas, Bovada on the shore. Like they're gonna be the ones that get suckered in and never really want to escape that bubble of ignorance. Do you see there being any way for them to escape that?
Well, no. The easy answer is no. It's something I thought about a lot. Like, how can these guys not get this right? And initially, uh, my thinking is that people are more incompetent or misled than they are malicious, or have an agenda. And I'm slowly moving away from that and admitting that I might be wrong. Uh, if if you I hate to pick on people like David Purdom, but it's somebody who I follow, and 2 years ago I liked a majority of his tweets because it was some informative stuff. But now it's become where people like Purdom, they are siding with the information that is slanted toward the books, purposely so. When you're not reporting that William Hill or CG Technology is banning or limiting bettors, and you're just not reporting that, but yet you're reporting all the other stuff that's makes the sports books in a positive light, you kind of start to say, well, man, why is he not reporting this and he's reporting that? Well, it probably comes down to access. Pro bettors or semi-pro bettors, they can't help out reporters financially or with access or anything the way sports books can. If it's a slow news cycle, the sports books can provide a writer with information that the masses may like more. It's the only thing I can figure out. I mean, it's just little by little. They like access, or I say they, I mean, of course, majority of reporters, they like access and easy information for their articles, because it is difficult to write even 2 or 3 times a day just about sports gambling.
Yeah.
So it comes down to, well, what can the pro bettors or sports bettors do for me? And that's why I think there's so many, there's so much bad information, or there's so little good writers of around. I mean, I can't. Ryan Roderberg is one that stands out. I think he's a lawyer, if I'm not mistaken. And at pre-legalization, as this was coming up 6 months before the official legalization, he had put some good articles out that weren't fodder. They weren't stuff that was just for clicks or for readers. It's just stuff that I think that he really thought was informative. And he's pretty much the only one that I've seen. He was a guest on a pod for Rufus Peabody and Jeff Mott. I listened to it after legalization, and he was just as good. I mean, there was nothing, there was no hidden agenda there. It was just, hey, this is what happened. This is what I see possibly could happen down the road for recreational bettors and for maybe advantage bettors. And it was pretty straightforward. And it's kind of a rarity, because I don't think he's trying to sell anything. He's not trying to sell his whatever website he's from, or hey, read my article. It didn't seem like he cared too much. And when that happens, I think you end up making deals with the devil. And it's not good. There's no good stuff. And the rest of the guys that get Bovada was actually pretty smart. Sending out in the last 4 or 5 years, they just spam every reporter's or journalist's email and just say, here's the lines from Bovada.lv. And I think guys they're just lazy, or they're misinformed and lazy. You get that, oh, here's the line. Here, Bovada from Vegas. That's why I like that running joke that's on Twitter.
Yeah.
They don't understand. And where I mean, we laugh about it because it's so obviously silly, but you have people that don't understand, the people that are betting with local books, a few hundred a game, and they maybe never been to Vegas, and they actually think Bovada's in Vegas because the journalist from the Philadelphia Daily News said so. I mean, those guys mess up constantly.
Yeah.
I mean, and I've tried the funny / frustrating part of that is I'll send a Twitter message or even an email that'll nicely point out that say, hey, this is not in Las Vegas, and Las Vegas is a small part of the market, and it matters with limits and blah, blah, blah. And they'll just either blow you off or tell you you're wrong.
Yeah.
which is and I think that kind of tilted Groovin a little bit. Like, don't tell me I'm wrong. Where I kind of tend to laugh at it a little bit, but it just shakes your head. Like, when people are completely wrong and they tell you you're wrong, and you're like, no, I'm not wrong. What's wrong with you? I don't know. It's maddening.
Well, yeah, you're not gonna ever get anything from them. They're never gonna contribute anything positive to the gambling scene. That everything they're being fed, they're just, they're gonna willingly just kind of go along with the fraud.
Which is weird because, if they're considering themselves journalists, don't you look for the truth? And I
I
think
mean,
that's kind of overall, not just in sports gambling, but I think that's kind of a trend everywhere where everything's about clicks now. Everything's about, who cares if the information is correct as long as people are reading it. It's kind of an insane situation all over. And when it dumbs down to sports gambling, it's really odd. How do you put out Bovada? You think Bovada.lv means you're in Vegas? It's just,
yeah,
it's just all you have to do is do a quick search. Like, hey,
yeah,
and you have people that are not at regular national newspapers that maybe they've never been to Vegas, or they've been to Vegas and they well, there's so many casinos there, I can't hit them all. Or it's just, but but how do you not know that who's the bigger casino and who, the Westgate Super Contest is at Westgate. It's not at, it's fill in the blanks of anywhere you want to go with that information. They just don't want to do it. They don't want to do the work, and it's crazy a little bit.
No, yeah, no. I remember seeing somebody on Twitter point out like doing one of those quote tweets, and it was like something about like how .lv, like how Vegas does not have its own domain. Like, it was one of those like it was like quote tweets something that the general population knows, but like a certain aspect doesn't know, and it's like .lv doesn't mean Las Vegas, but I don't know.
The whole thing of the people, the responses from the journalists that are incorrect says more about them, and I guess, are they afraid of hurting their brand, or I'm not sure why. I mean, there's a handful that I've noticed, like, we're gambling Twitter will say, hey, this is wrong, and then I can't remember the one guy. Imagine it's only one or two guys that have said, oh, thanks for correcting me.
Right.
You would think that they would stand out in my mind, but I know that there's only been a couple that do that. Others, well, what's worse than the journalists? The radio show hosts, because that they don't care anything about truth. Guys that have RJ Bell on or whatever, they're just complete salesmen. So I don't expect them to necessarily care about what's true and what's not. But yet they have this facade of truth, and recreational bettors listen to it. And it's just, the whole thing is kind of strange. You look at the new state. Well, since the last time we talked, when was the last time we talked? 2 years ago, I guess.
Yeah, it was about 2 years ago.
Yeah. So now, Chad Millman used to be, I don't know what his title was for ESPN, something pods or gamble. I don't know what he would do, but he got in at that Sloan conference. I think we spoke about that last time, where he bought a tout to Sloan, and but he's friendly with people like Jeff Ma, people like that who are kind of respected gamblers, and he's kind of parlayed this into this job where he runs Sports Action. Sports Action Network is nothing more than a way to sell subscriptions under the fraudulence of oh yeah, we're selling you good information from our experts. And this VSiN is opened, or I don't know if you have a chance to hear VSiN. The Vegas, it's Brent Musburger's stab into, I don't know what it is. I thought initially it was going to be something decent, and it turned out to be, it's like they have touts on.
Yeah, I gotta
half the guys they work for pregame, and they never bring it up.
Yeah, no, I got followed by them when they first started as a Twitter account, and I was on the fence about the whole idea of it, because I still haven't seen I still haven't seen an outlet that really covers sports gambling in an honest manner, and I don't know if there's ever going to be a really big outlet that does that, because like we've discussed before, it's just there's no incentive for the guys with advantages to share even the slightest bit of advantage, because it's gonna give their edge away. So there's naturally going to be this market for people to sell crap information, and I don't really see that changing anytime soon.
And that's kind of the reason I was originally on Twitter to begin with. I think, and go back to Groovin, we were kind of on the same page about this. I mean, a case could be made that if bettors are paying touts, that money could be into the market. That they could be actually pulling that money out of the market. So instead of paying your tout $500, maybe you'll bet extra $500. without having to pay the touts. I mean, touts are always going to be around. Anything there's money and finances, there'll be somebody that will be trying to put false information out irresponsibly. So I kind of get that. That doesn't mean that the media outlets have to promote them.
Right.
With guys on ESPN radio pretty much running at not specific ads, but having them on is kind of a de facto advertisement.
Oh yeah.
But we were on the same page thinking that, number one, if we give even a little bit of information out that and convince people, you don't need to pay for that. You don't need to pay for the fact that, maybe play an underdog every once in a while. I keep saying that. I'm going to keep saying it because I had people growing up that, you look at their slate of games and it would be like 300 games over weekend and there'd be no underdogs.
Yeah.
Like people think I'm making that up. That's 100% true because the rationale was, if Team A is favored by 3-1, they really should be 4-1. So I have to think that mindset exists everywhere. And when people pay for touts, maybe if you just give a little bit of information, say, hey, not every underdog is going to lose. If you can just pass that simple information, then maybe answer why. That's not really going to hurt people's bottom line, and it may pull people from, or maybe they'll be less likely to pay for information. It's a difficult road to go down because, like you said, no one's going to share really good, sharp information. So if you have a station like VSiN or Sports Action who are saying, here we have experts and we're going to do this, we know that that's bullshit. But is it possible to give out some? There is. Is it likely that you'll be able to revolve an entire station around it? That I don't know. I know somebody that mentioned touting because they said, well, if the rec better, the severely limited rec better, you say that person's going to lose, I don't know, maybe a little bit, maybe that person won't even go 50-50. Maybe they'll only be likely to hit 48%. And the attitude was, well, if I can move that person up, so if they don't lose 48% of games, they lose 51% of the games. Yeah, they still lose, but they're not losing as much. The analogy was mentioned where, well, if you play basic rule blackjack, you're still going to lose, but you just won't lose your money as quickly.
Right.
You can kind of make a case for that. I don't think you pay for that. But if that kind of information, say, hey, I'm going to give you a couple things that can help you a little bit, there's not a problem in that. But again, can you have a whole station revolving around that? I don't know. It's probably not.
Okay. All right. So going back to the legalized betting aspect, as far as the pros and cons for the legalized betting, I get the impression that people who are pros or advantage bettors, however you want to categorize them, aren't for them. I don't think much is going to change, at least based on what I've seen people discuss, especially if William Hill is running a lot of things, and most people that are advantage bettors have been banned from Will Hill. So, do you see any pros for the advantage bettors with this legalized betting?
I'm trying to think of any scenario possible. The only one I could think of is if this creates some better competition amongst, say, big locals who might be mirroring offshore. There might be a worry that they're going to lose their volume. Of course, a lot of those, they don't want perfectly advantaged players either. There's a way to mask some of your bets with those people so you're not cut off. That's the only scenario I can think of, and it's kind of a reach to think that books would locals would be all in line or even offer maybe a little bit better lines or maybe give backs in maybe 5% off losses, things like that. Uh, I initially thought, and I think I was wrong. I initially thought that, yeah, if New Jersey gets sports gambling and Delaware gets sports gambling and New York gets it, that there could be a few smaller casinos that could pop up that will not ban gamblers. Maybe they'll work on a smaller margin. That remains to be seen. As it looks right now, William Hill was gobbling up all the licenses
Yeah.
for New Jersey. I mean, they grabbed Monmouth, they grabbed the rights to the old Revel or the previous Revel. I'll call it old because it was. And if you're not familiar with Revel, Revel was opened a few years ago on the beach in Atlantic City and was as nice as the Borgata, but it was just they just had a really weird uh, marketing plan to be a casino that wasn't really a casino, and I mean, you didn't have to be an expert to realize that was going to last long. But now they revamped it. Someone bought it. Some property company out of Denver or something bought it, and right at the time where sports gambling got legalized. So they're going to add a sports book, and William Hill is going to run that as well. Uh, there'll be a couple competitors, but I don't know how it's going to shake out now. I don't know what I was expecting. I kind of thought that if you're a rec better and you're someplace where your local bookie is really robbing you, like on futures, and now you have an alternative. So as bad as maybe William Hill's futures are, they weren't as bad as your local guy is robbing you.
Sure. Yeah.
Maybe he's pulling. Your local guy was pulling 40% out of the futures. Maybe William Hill is only going to pull out 27. So maybe locals will be worried about losing that. And I've actually gotten a DM from a couple people that said, a couple of my guys are now in line with Bookmaker.
Okay.
So that made me a little bit optimistic. Like maybe that will occur. Maybe like I haven't been to Borgata yet. Borgata is not a William Hill casino. Their lines are I think they're doing 20-cent lines in baseball, which sucks. But maybe they need one person to pop up that would do 10-cent lines, and maybe they'll do more volume. I don't know. I think it's for the advantage better. I don't see anything yet on the horizon. But for the rec better, there could be some because of the example I just gave.
Okay. All right. So you mentioned Borgata. You hadn't been there, but have you been? Have you had the opportunity to bet anywhere else in Delaware or New Jersey yet? And if so, how the experience was?
Yeah, the day Delaware Park opened, I went down. Got there a little bit early. I wanted to see what kind of setup they were going to do, and I don't want to overly judge them for their opening day as far as how they handle traffic or whatever. But I was more interested in what lines they were putting out, and I think, I don't think. I know that they had dime lines in baseball, which was good. Now, I know somebody was in Dover. It's supposed to be under the same umbrella. Uh, and I'm not positive if Dover Downs was doing 10-cent lines up till like $1.60 on baseball, but Delaware Park definitely did. But their lines were a little bit higher. So I think the Dodgers played at Colorado the opening day at Delaware Park, and they had an opening line of Dodgers 122, but 115 and 116 was widely available offshore. So
Okay.
I was again. I think maybe I was hoping it would be 6 cents better at Delaware Park, or again, I think William Hill's also doing Delaware Park. But I don't know. I just went to go check it out to see, so that I didn't have to depend on somebody else telling me. It's a small area. I guess it'll expand. I just saw an article that said they've done 7 million gross so far. I think that number is probably inflated. Again, I don't trust a lot of the numbers from the journalists that they put out. I'm not a complete cynic, but I there's kind of shady accounting going on there. And I thought, again, I thought it would be something that maybe might be able to find certain mistakes. Just think, if this becomes completely ubiquitous, where it's everybody has it, someone's bound to copy something incorrectly. I mean, that probably will be the exception, not the rule. But that was kind of my optimistic hope with New Jersey. Like, they're going to open up a small power. They don't know who's going to run it yet. It's going to be on the site of the old Garden State Park racetrack. Well, Garden State Racetrack has been gone for years, but it's a shopping center now. But New Jersey wrote a law allowing allowing them to have a legalized parlor, really, to be in the middle of the shopping center, and that license is up for grabs. Now, I think I read, maybe I'm wrong, it's not up for grabs. Somebody did buy it. I believe it's the people that own Parks, which is Philly Park.
Okay.
So that organization, I guess it's Green and Associates, maybe. I don't know. They're going to run that. Now, they're not associated with anybody else in other states besides PA. So maybe there's a chance that they'll either give, they'll mirror lines that are fair. I don't know. I'm not sure, but it won't be William Hill. I guess that's a good sign.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
just to step back for a second, about you mentioned about like some of the journalists and some of the things that they're not covering. There was a big question about, William Hill has banned hundreds of bettors, sometimes not even pro bettors, just people that have look like that they fit under a model of people that could win. And they're kind of notorious, as you know, banning and limiting people. Well, New Jersey, you're not allowed to ban bettors, and there was this thing on Twitter where from Gambling Twitter and other people kind of asking questions, and they were asking journalists who have Twitter accounts like, "Hey, could you find this out?" Almost like trolling them, saying, "Are you going to ask this question?" So it literally took me a couple minutes to find out who the spokesperson was for the New Jersey, whatever their acronym is, New Jersey Gambling or Sports Gambling Authority or whatever it is.
Okay.
And there was an email address. So I emailed exactly what the worries were. Some people like, hey, if I'm banned in Nevada with William Hill, knowing that you have a law in New Jersey that you cannot ban people outside of, unless I, hit somebody or something, saw something out of the ordinary like that, just for betting. And the response back was pretty detailed. I got like a 3-paragraph response saying, no, they will not be banned. And for any reason, they said it can't ban, but you can be limited. So does that mean if I won and I was betting 400 or 500 a game or 1,000 a game, you're going to make me, lower my limit to $20? From the response that I got, that could happen, I guess. But if you were banned in Nevada, the response is that you won't be banned in New Jersey.
Okay.
So
Well,
I guess that's something good, I suppose. But but if they limit people to 20 or 25 hours, that's kind of lousy, also.
yeah. I mean, you're not going to get much of an advantage out of that. I mean, it's not going to help you much.
No, but at least they don't ban you. I mean that's got to be.
I mean,
That's got.
that's the right road to go down. Obviously, I mean, you should never be banned just because you're good at something. But if you're not banned, but you're only limited to 20 or $50, like, I don't know how far that can get you.
Well, I'm going to test it at the Borgata. I didn't test it at Delaware Park because I literally couldn't find anything to bet.
Okay.
I'm going to test it at Borgata and see what happens. If I try to bet like 3,000 on something, just to see what they make me do. I'm going to try to do something that even, something maybe with totals or something, just to see what happens. I haven't seen anybody do that and report it. If we had did this pod maybe next week, I would have had that information. But I'll just put it on Twitter if they ask me for my ID or whatever. Now we're just where I live. Delaware Park is actually closer to me than Monmouth.
Okay.
and it's actually a little bit closer to me than Borgata also. But I haven't gotten some other people ask me like, "What's Borgata?" People that are just not in this area who may end up coming in this area to bet if it's worthwhile. And so I'll post that report. I'll post exactly what they have me do.
Okay. Great. Look forward to hearing that. Okay, so we'll go to the next part of the pod here, and I think this is a topic that you brought up in our DMs here, but you've had people ask you the difference between a pro better, a rec better, and in between, and you said you get a lot of questions about that. So, I think you wanted to maybe explain a little bit about the breakdown, at least how you'd like to address the difference between all those.
Well, it's difficult for, let's say you're a rec better and who's trying to get better, and you'll have some people that'll identify themselves as a pro better, and they're really not. They're just a tout, or they're saying you know maybe they're a tout, or they're doing something branding wise for people to follow them by calling themselves a pro better. I had somebody do a phone interview for me as a writer for Vice, and we were talking about Calcutta uh, uh, raffles, or whatever you call them, Calcutta
Yeah.
auctions, and it's something I've done off and on for a few years. And one of the questions he asked me is, "Are you a pro better?" And I said, "Well, it's a difficult question for me to answer because at one point I was, and I kind of just took a step backwards." Of course, the step backwards is because I didn't have a very good 2004, so
Okay.
I didn't adjust maybe the way I should have.
Okay.
And then life changes. You get cut off, you get banned from some people. If you're dealing with locals, maybe they pay you only a portion. Like there's a million things that could happen uh, that could adjust your bankroll. You could go from a pretty high 6-figure bankroll to a lower 5-figure one. So I think it comes down to bankroll. I don't think anybody should call themselves a pro better unless they have a substantial bankroll and that's their only mode of income. So 100,000 a year to one person might not be enough money to live on. So
Right.
I don't even like putting a dollar value on it. But I do know if you have a bankroll that's say less than 150,000, you're really not a pro better. You're in poker speak, you're probably around there. You're probably somebody that might be good enough, but you just can't. You maybe have kids or whatever your situation is. So it would be unfair for me to say even though I bet probably almost every day, but because the limits now are a little bit lighter and it's more difficult to get a certain amount down, I'd say for my own descriptions, I'd say I call myself more of a semi-pro or investor. And then you have people that are maybe below that. Maybe they have a $20,000 bankroll, and that's still a decent investment if for people that are betting. If you're betting, uh, you know, 5,000 games a year in different sports, you still want to have a little bit of an edge. You still want to win. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how I think it's fair to describe those types of people. Uh, but the bottom rung being, of course, the people that I seem to run into all the time, the people that want to pay 35 cents off of five in football, and
Yeah.
tell you they're crazy. And I had a guy a couple of weeks ago tell me in a bar how good Jeff Allen was in 1995. And I wonder what happened to Jeff Allen, some tout that I said, what did he do for it? Oh, we bought him 1 week and he went 10-1. They go, who cares? They're like, what do you mean, who cares? Like they just don't, there's just some people that don't get small sample sizes or anything like that. And I think so. The rec better that understands that, I have to rank that person a little bit higher as not as clueless. Actually, Brian, I had a DM from somebody that said, "Why are you? It's not a why would you care about white knighting recreational bettors?" That's what somebody asked me, and I had to take a minute to think about it. I was like, well, I never really thought and looked at it that way. I guess I have a soft spot, I guess, for people that are recreational bettors that want to get better, because at one point that's what I was. At one point, that's what a lot of people were.
Yeah, and I mean, ideally, you don't necessarily want those people to become so good that they're taking away your advantages, but at the same time, you don't want them to be the ones that are buying picks, spending $50 to $100 of their hard-earned money when they could, maybe be learning a little bit more from you and not have to pay a thing.
That's a perfect thing. I can't word it that well because I have ADD, but that's exactly what really I was kind of shooting for. I mean, I think even if you're equipped completely with the best information, you could still flame out.
Yeah.
The fact that the chance of you becoming the top 2 or 3% is unbelievably rare. It's just so rare that you might, because everything has to fall in place. Not only do you have to have the correct games, now's a huge problem of getting the amounts down that you need. I mean, if you have the biggest myth that the sports books in Vegas push out is that they'll take every bet. You'd be surprised how ingrained that myth is to regular bettors. Uh, I told you I'm in the Philadelphia area, so when the Eagles made the Super Bowl, you can't you cannot believe how many people parroted that story about $1 million got down on the Eagles. And I said, that's not what happened. I said, yeah, the guy got down at $1 million, but not at the advertised price. And the looks, even some of the people that are kind of bright and kind of trust me a little, they're kind of looking at me a little strange. Like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, if they were putting out a price of New England minus 200 and take back 180 on the Eagles, and you roll in there with a $500,000, they're not taking plus 180 on your bet. They were taking 140 or 130 or 120 or 155. They're splitting it up. South Point had pretty much the only casino that said, only sportsbook that said, oh yeah, we split it up and here's how we did it. But MGM never explained it. They just said, oh yeah, we took $1 million bet on the Eagles. They left out the part that they gave it at $1.40.
Yeah, that's a little deceptive there. Yeah.
Shit, I would have took the 140. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make.
Yeah.
Here's why it makes sense. They do it for marketing. I mean, it's obvious they do it for marketing. And it works because there's people that are, fringe bettors, and now that myth has been sold. Wow, you can bet anything you want in Vegas. And I tell a true story where 7-8 years ago it was at Wynn, and I tried to bet $400 on a total. Must have been the wrong total because they canceled the bet. And I know that happens all the time, but I thought my response was kind of funny. I was like, "This is Wynn's place, right? Like Steve Wynn owns this, right? It's not like Fred Wynn, like
right.
like $400." But that's the pushback, and sure, people that actually live in Vegas and bet all the time have dozens of those stories, but it just doesn't happen. They don't. That myth is out there, and it works.
Yeah, it does. Yep. Okay, one last topic here. This was something that came into my.
Wait a minute, what was that last topic? I can't remember. I'm so aggravated talking about. Talking about people who thought, the mispricing or the change in price. I forgot what the original.
Oh yeah, no. So yeah, that came from the question of the defining the pro rec and in between gamblers. So that's where that went. I love where the tangents go, by the way. So it's all good.
If I get aggravated, that kind of aggravates me. That the sports books have a myth that's completely misleading and false, and it works. And then people are looking at me like I'm crazy. Like, no, I'm almost positive you can go into any casino and bet $1 million. No, you can't. What?
Yeah, well, they've done a hell of a job marketing. You got to give them that. They know the people will buy into it. The SAPs will report it, and that probably won't change. So, the last time
you had a question from somebody asked me also about Roxy Roxbo's line service with Las Vegas consultants back in the day, and I had said something offhand. That was kind of a part troll and part inside joke of, Las Vegas consultants' lines were just awful at one point. And it wasn't that their lines were awful. That years ago, they used to put Philadelphia Daily News would run a consensus line in the 90s. So they never would say what book it was from. It was just like, here's the line. And a layman would look at it and be like, oh, that must be the everybody in Vegas must be using that particular line. Like, nobody really paid too much attention to it, except that it was usually in line with what was going on. Like, if the Philadelphia Daily News posted Eagles -3, usually the day of that game it was 3. But there was another paper used to post the Vegas line by Roxy Roxborough, and it was always off. So I think what that particular paper used to do is just put whatever the opening line was, and then they would never change it. So they often were way off. Like it became like a running joke. Like the Sixers would be like 4 in that line, and by game time it was like 6.5. Well, the problem was it was never 4, or that was the opening line at small limits.
Yeah.
So what happened in the 90s, there was a local bookmaker that used to use that line. And so we were like, we called to get confused. We was, wait a minute, is that the line or is that this guy's line? And then I figured out that he was just taking the line out of the paper, not adjusting it. Now, of course, he soon went out of business, but he was using Las Vegas Sports Consultants' line. So sometimes I kind of I'll put posts out there that say how bad that line was, when in reality it was, I think, their opening line.
Okay. Yeah, that was the last topic that I was going to bring up because somebody mentioned that. I'm guessing
the guy that could really answer that, I think, you familiar with Rufus Peabody?
Yeah.
He used to work for them, and it was a question I'd love to be able to answer, or I'd love to be able to ask him. How much did that influence the market? Or what? I think at one point everybody used Las Vegas Sports Consultants, I guess. I'm not positive the history of that. I mean, I bet that long ago, but I don't know if everybody used that line. I know there was a lot of in-house shops back then before offshore became prevalent. Because once offshore occurred, then they set the line. You go back as far as when they had Cascade Casino, and they set the line, and they trumped Stardust and whoever else was putting it out. So that, right around that late 90s time, it's a little murky, and I'm not positive the chicken came before the egg or whatever.
Okay. All right. Is there any final thoughts before we close it off here?
I don't know. Did we cover everything? I can't remember. I know.
Yeah.
I know that this is going to get. There'll be more interesting topics as this sports gambling expands. I don't think it's going to expand as rapidly as people think it is.
No, definitely not.
Like, I'll give you Pennsylvania's example. They shot themselves kind of in the foot by throwing out this 36 or 36.5% tax. They just completely don't understand that sports gambling revenue is a small portion of regular revenue. Yeah. That's kind of the other myth. That's kind of the other ball that got dropped by reporters. And try to find an article that explains that sports gambling is not a huge part of casino gambling, as far as the revenue is concerned. I mean, it's penny slots destroys it, and even baccarat is more of a revenue stream than sports gambling. So I think somebody didn't do their homework in Pennsylvania. They figured, this is as great as having table games or whatever their rationale was, and they threw some ridiculous price out for a license, and on top they were going to charge 36%, and they got no takers, and we're kind of surprised by it. So I think that might end up occurring at more states than we think. Things like that.
Yeah, I know that I was just reading an article, one of the original articles that came out in Illinois, and somebody was talking about, I think they were saying that they were going to try and make it so that, that they would need to pay like a $10,000 licensing fee to the casinos. and then wagers would be taxed at, I'm reading the article right now, 12.5%. So, I don't know. I don't know how far that's gotten since then. I didn't see any more recent articles from Illinois since then. But even in my state, it's going to be like probably another 5 or so years before it even becomes close to a reality. And I don't know if Indiana is going to progress any further. I think, if I remember right, Indiana was going to be one of the states that voted on it as well. But I think they're going to need to figure out a lot of the mistakes that other states make and maybe learn from them and see. They might need to figure that stuff out before it even becomes a reality.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you ever see some of these articles that said that sports gambling is a $1 trillion bill, whatever. Just throw out some crazy $500 billion business, and they never provide the math. I guess they think, well, I know why they do it, because it's a good headline and people click in the article and read the article. But and there's no need to confuse anybody with stats or a breakdown of that 500 billion and or whatever crazy number that they've thrown out. And the experts estimate. Well, what experts? It's just who's saying that? Like are they counting every potential block pool that it's ever put in? I don't know. I don't know where it's coming from. And just on its face, the reason that whatever number, let's say they came up with a legit number. I don't even know what that number would be. Let's say you came up with a legit number. You'd have to slice off now a percentage of that, because you're adding in local people that bet with local or underground or illegal books. They're credit betting. So if you have a guy that's betting, I don't know, a couple $1,000 in a month on credit, what do you think he's going to bet if he's got to put the cash up?
Right.
I don't know what that number is. It's going to be less than the credit, that's for sure. But I don't know exactly what it's going to be. I think it could be as high as 90% less. How about not at all? You might not, or maybe that person now becomes, well, if I wander to a casino, or if they get the online, like New Jersey's going to have an online aspect probably in another 30 days.
Okay.
So yeah, if you they'll check, where you're betting from, and you'll be able to bet online. So maybe that credit better will continue to bet some of his $50 per game on that. But if you have to start making deposits and stuff, you don't think that number is going to go down. So point being is, all these numbers are falsely inflated, and the fact that we haven't had a breakdown from any journalist or a rare breakdown is troublesome. Because they're tossing out a false narrative that doesn't help anybody.
Right.
And you're showing it with Pennsylvania, where Pennsylvania lawmakers just looked at a couple articles, it looks like, and just like, hey, this pie's $1 billion. 36% seems fair. And the guy who floated that bill is from out near Pittsburgh. And nobody, I can't say nobody has questioned it. I'm sure it's been questioned, but I don't know how that's going to adjust now. So I don't think Pennsylvania is even going to be on the board as far as getting it for at least another couple years.
Sure. Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate your time, Professor. Maybe as this advances down the line, we could have you on again. Like I said, I'm not going to be doing this regularly at this point, but I'll probably check in every now and then with people and have the likes of you and Seth and others on. But I do appreciate your time.
Oh, of course, yeah. There's some other people I'd like to hear from. I always like hearing Seth. Anybody from Seafill is actually pretty entertaining. I like hearing. I like the past pods with those guys. But what? This is an evolving, changing landscape. I'd like to hear from it. The other, if for no other reason, other pods are they're doing something besides giving out information. Everybody else seems to be selling something.
Yeah.
So I think so I look forward to hearing from whoever else you use.
Okay. Well, great. I appreciate it, and I'll be posting this shortly. And once again, thanks for joining, and everyone, thanks for listening. Have a good day.